Welcome in to Rover Sports, and I am here with a buddy of mine that I just met on the Discord of Reed's Ranch. It's Seth Hughes, calling into my show today, a celebrity in Seth Hughes. And Seth, how are you today?
I'm doing good, buddy. How about you?
Oh, I am doing quite well. And so, Seth, have you ever been up to Philadelphia before?
I have only been to the Philadelphia airport. That is all. I've never seen any of the sights or anything, unfortunately.
Okay, so I did hear, though, on Reed's Ranch that you were talking about the Sixers, and I think that are you a doubter in Sam Hinkie, or are you a Sam Hinkie guy?
I'm a fan. I like I like, regardless if it works out or not, I like it because it was different. He tried something different, and he shook up how things are done. It looks like it is going to work out, but I like that he changed things up. And I'm not a big NBA guy, but I mean, I at least know enough to know that he totally changed how things are done in professional sports, which I appreciate, the outside the box thinking.
Yeah, because the NBA regular season can be pretty boring, with players not really trying and stuff. But at least, like, now the Sixers have Al Horford, they have Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. And without, like, tanking, I guess the 76ers would have never had an opportunity to get Ben Simmons.
Yeah. I mean, they got Simmons, they got Embiid by tanking. I mean, yeah, they missed on a couple guys. Missing on Markelle Fultz sucks, but you still got Simmons and Embiid, and now you got other guys, and people want to play with the 76ers, play for the 76ers now because you have Simmons and Embiid, and you don't get those if you don't tank. And just like being stuck in that area where you're like the 8th seed or you're like a late lottery pick just seems like the worst place in the world to be.
Like Detroit.
Yes. That seems like the worst place in the world.
Detroit, even Indiana, like getting to the conference finals. And maybe that's why you're not a huge NBA guy, because there's only like 3 or 4 teams that can legitimately win a championship.
Yeah, but my issue with the NBA, and I know this is stupid, and my issue has always been that no matter what the score is, the game doesn't matter until the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're down by 20 or 25 points, it doesn't matter. The fourth quarter is a new ball game. You have, because you can come back so quickly. I don't have the patience to sit and watch a full game.
No, I understand that. Like, if Golden State is down by 15 points, the third quarter they can come on in, and then they can hit like a 20-3 run, and then it's a new game going to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's just the first half is almost meaningless.
No, that's yeah.
That's just kind of always been the regular season does drag on a lot. The regular season really drags on to me, and then just the playoffs last 2 months. I feel like, and do we really need the first round to be a 7-game series? Can we go back to the best of 5? Can we do something to speed up? Like, nobody cares about the 1 versus 8 first round matchup. It's a bloodbath.
Yeah, and if it was 5, it would actually be like a little exciting, because maybe those teams would have like a little bit of an opportunity, and like maybe not an opportunity, but then the 3 seed versus the 6 seed would be absolutely awesome. If it totally does drag on to 7 games. Yeah,
I mean that's kind of my issue with it, but I mean people love the NBA. I have nothing against the NBA. Basketball's not my main sport. I like football and baseball much more.
Right.
But to each their own.
Right. So we're talking here with Seth Hughes, and he's kind enough to come on Rover Sports, my radio show. And I found out about, Reed's Ranch because I met John Reed actually at SEC Media Days in Birmingham, when John used to go to the SEC Media Days. And then I heard this podcast. Do you want to just tell the listeners about Reed's Ranch? Like, how did you meet John Reed? Because it seemed like I actually heard you guys didn't know each other while you guys were at the University of Tennessee. And were you just a popular caller of his show? I mean, how did the show start, Reed's Ranch?
Yeah, so we are the same age, and but we didn't know each other when we went to University of Tennessee together. And we just started following each other on Twitter, and John had a radio show, and at this point, at the very beginning, he was doing a radio show on campus when he was still in school. He graduated, I think, like 1 year after I did, maybe a semester after I did. So he was still doing his on-campus radio show, and he would just need somebody to call in. I guess he thought I was funny enough to call in, and I would call in. And after he graduated, he got a normal radio show in Knoxville, and he would ask me to call in. And when I'd call in, he would tweet it out that I was on the line, and a lot more people would start listening, or more people would start listening. And he got out of doing radio. And while he was out of doing radio, he was like, well, I guess I'll do a podcast. And he asked me if I would co-host it with him. And originally it was supposed to be like I was not going to be the only co-host, but it just ended up that I became the only co-host. And so it's been over 3 years now that we've been doing it. It's pretty crazy to think about that we've been doing it for 3 years. But once a week, twice a week, I sit down and we talk for about 45 minutes to an hour about pretty much everything, but typically more of a college-centric podcast in terms of sporting events, at least during football season and during UT basketball season. But
yeah,
during the off season, we'll talk about anything really, you know.
Yeah, conspiracy theories and anything crazy that the Discord talks about. And it's kind of cool how all of your followers are in the Discord. And I'm just trying to get acquainted with some of these guys, but it seems like you guys have known each other your whole lives, like even the friends and followers of the podcast in the Discord.
Yeah, it's crazy that there are some people who, because I can't imagine wanting to listen to me talk about sports. I'm pretty much wrong about everything because I just talk off the cuff so much. But there are people that have listened to every single podcast we have ever done, and when we release one, they listen to it immediately when it comes out, and I'm appreciative of it. I really am thankful for it. But it is crazy that I guess at this point, if you've listened to the podcast for 3 years and you talk to us on the Discord, you do feel like you know us, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and some of the meetups, I'm excited to try to meet you guys for some of these Tennessee football games. So, Seth, we know that you live in Alabama and you're from there. I kind of have a similar experience to you because up here in Philadelphia, the NFL is like truly king, and college football, like the cliche college of choice is Penn State. But they're not like die-hard like Penn State or Big Ten fans. It's mostly like Giants versus Eagles in the NFL. And my parents are from, New Jersey, so I'm a Giants fan, living in Eagles territory. And was it similar for you, especially during the Nick Saban era starting in 2007, where you were the lone Tennessee fan at your school? And did that strengthen your bond for Tennessee football because everybody would love the Alabama Crimson Tide when you were growing up?
Yeah, it's my parents are from Tennessee, so my both sets of grandparents are from Tennessee. My entire extended family is from Tennessee. Everyone is from Tennessee in my family except me and my two sisters. But, growing up, like my cousin, I have cousins that went to UT, we were Tennessee fans. And growing up, we had Peyton Manning and Jamal Lewis and Al Wilson, and we were awesome, and we beat Alabama every single year. I remember I think it was 2001, being at the Tennessee-Alabama game at Alabama, and we had just beat them for the 7th straight time. So growing up, it was awesome. And I really didn't understand what it felt like to never beat Alabama because we always beat Alabama. And then Nick Saban came when I was, I guess, a sophomore in high school. Nick Saban came, and that pretty much changed everything. We haven't beaten him once, and Tennessee has gotten really bad, and it's tough sometimes. It's really tough. You know, most of the people that I am friends with that are Alabama fans, you know, they love me and they're not going to talk trash. But you'll come across a guy who he might not know me that well. He might just know I'm a UT guy, and he wants to talk trash. And it's just like, dude, really, just go on about your day. There's no need. Yeah, Tennessee sucks. I'm well aware that UT sucks.
Yeah,
it can get really, really old.
It's like kicking like a guy, you know, that I don't know. It's like kicking a midget almost, you know, down.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. It's like, yeah, I'm aware we're not any good anymore. Like I watch the team play every weekend. I am well aware that Alabama is much better than Tennessee, and you're not going to get any arguments out of me. Right. So I don't really know what you're trying to prove by saying anything. But it's not too bad. I mean, I have several friends who are Alabama fans and even Auburn fans that listen to every episode of Reed's Ranch that I do. So most of my friends are cool about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know as well as I do, being, you know, not an Eagles fan, that it gets old.
Well, but you know what's interesting is that the Eagles have always beaten the New York Giants. You know, even when I was a kid, you know, the Giants would win the Super Bowl, but the Eagles with Andy Reid growing up would still dominate over Eli Manning. They'd still dominate the Giants. So when you were a young kid, though, I think like the peak of sports rivalries between friends is like in middle school. And were you the type of kid in 5th grade that when Tennessee was rolling, would you like start trolling Alabama a little bit? Like, would you talk crap to your friends and rile them up a little bit? I mean, here's a weird question. Did you even feel bad for Alabama any of the years when you were just blitzing them?
No, and I talked a ton of trash because, like you said, you're in middle school.
Yeah.
You know, that's what you're supposed to do. And that's just the way that it is. And so, yeah, I mean, I absolutely did. And
did you feel bad for Alabama at the time?
No, absolutely not. I feel bad for 0 college football teams that suck. Like, I don't feel bad for any of them because what they've been through, I have a hard time believing it can rival like what UT has been through in the last 10 years. Like, I just don't sympathize with them. I mean, it sucks, but, you know, it hasn't been worse than what UT's been through. I truly believe that. Like, even, you know, Nebraska got just absolutely hammered by Ohio State the other night when College Game Day was there. Nebraska has their head coach who's going to get them back to glory, and they go out there and they just get absolutely hammered on national TV. Like, I don't feel bad for Nebraska fans. That's just the way. I mean, Tennessee gets hammered by Alabama every single year, and we normally get hammered by Florida, and now we started getting hammered by Georgia. So I don't feel particularly bad about it.
Will you still watch like Auburn and Florida? And did you like enjoy that game though, Auburn and Florida this week?
Yeah, so growing up, I watched like every single college football game from 11 a.m. Central Time till midnight on Saturday night. I would watch it. As I've gotten older, I can't just sit there and watch sports all day, but I will watch. Typically, I will watch pretty much every SEC game of note, more or less. So I watched Auburn, Florida. I watched all of Auburn, Florida. I'll watch all of Florida LSU this weekend. And I'll watch the SEC night game typically. So, and I'll watch the big games from other conferences, but like I used to be able to watch like, you know, the Thursday night college football game growing up. Like Thursday night college football is not really a thing anymore, but like if it still was, I wouldn't be able to watch it. It's just too boring to me. The NFL is so much better than college football.
The NFL, interesting you say that. No, I'm glad that you're getting into the NFL. I guess the NFL is more competitive. Like even this weekend, like Michigan State, Ohio State, there's some windows in college football where the games are just complete blowouts. And the NFL at the 1 o'clock hour, you could put on every, 1 o'clock hour game, and you're going to find, you just have to go to a sports bar. It's tough to consume all the NFL games. But in college, I'm kind of like you used to be. Like, I can watch the Big 12. I can watch, Iowa State Baylor and see if Matt Rule's going to get his team up, or I can watch Texas Tech. Like, I could still watch Big 12 football.
Yeah, I do like Big 12 football. I'll watch Clemson, but like, to me, I think you put the nail on the head. Like, the best conference to watch after the SEC is the Big 12. I can't watch the Big 10. Like, I'm sorry, I can't watch it. I mean, it's awful. I watched some of that Michigan-Iowa game last weekend. It was horrible.
You didn't like that old school style of ball.
So I can handle a defensive game where, like, the defensive lines are just mauling people, but the Michigan-Iowa game just didn't even seem like that to me. It seemed more like offensive incompetence than defensive competence. Like the Auburn-Florida game last weekend, like, Auburn's defensive line it's the best in the nation. And they're out there just killing people, like getting turnovers and stuff. Like, that defensive line took over the game. Yeah, Auburn lost, but their defensive line kept them in the game. Like, that is, to me, is a whole lot different than Michigan and Iowa. It was just pitiful football.
Nate Stanley couldn't complete a pass, and Iowa's just the same Iowa, and they never adjust. And I don't think Michigan's very good either. Like, I think that Penn State and Harbaugh, I think Michigan's going to get killed. Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. Penn State looks pretty good.
Yeah.
They nobody's talking about them, but they look really good. I thought. I think that they look really good. I think that Penn State will hammer Michigan.
Yeah.
And Ohio State will. It'll be a bloodbath when they play Michigan.
Yeah, Ryan Day just coming in there for Urban Meyer, and just all the talent that Ohio State has. And the Big Ten, yeah, it's very top heavy. I guess, like, Minnesota's a team that I like PJ Fleck. Like, a lot of people might hate PJ Fleck and all his gimmicks, but I'm still excited that they're undefeated in the Big Ten. But yeah, that was a very slow Iowa-Michigan game, and I'm not sure Jim Harbaugh's going to be there much longer.
Yeah, I would love, Jim Harbaugh is notoriously hard to, like, he won't let really reporters ever be around him and, like, follow him around, but I would love to know what in the world has changed since he was at Stanford and he was at San Francisco. And I know that he had Andrew Luck at Stanford, and that changes everything because Andrew Luck was so good. But he beat USC one year when he had that team that was like 2-10. It was one of the biggest upsets in college football history. But, like, when he beat Pete Carroll, when Pete Carroll was still at USC, and then he goes to San Francisco and he's good with Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick. Like, the guy has won everywhere he's been. And then he gets to Michigan, and he looks totally incompetent. I mean, he doesn't look totally incompetent, but, like, every time his team has a big game, they lose. Well, and I would love to know, like, what on earth happened.
Well, I want to give you kind of an argument to that, or kind of a reasoning to that. It's because at Stanford, the expectations at Stanford and Michigan, I think, are completely different. And still at Stanford, he went 9-3. But the point is that it's Stanford, so it's so impressive when you go 9-3. But when you're playing at Michigan and you play teams like maybe a Wisconsin, you play a Rutgers. Who else in the Big Ten do you have to play from the East? Like Michigan State, they don't have big offense. And then when you're the highest paid coach and you're talking all this smack about the SEC, you put a huge target on your back. And Seth, like a couple of years ago, if you remember that Ohio State-Michigan game, he was like a 4th and 1 from stopping Ohio State and winning that game. Now, the point is, I will say this about Harbaugh. He hasn't adapted to like modern college football, and I hated how he gave up his play calling to Josh Gaddis. I think that was so stupid. Because he completely just took himself out of the mix. But his defense, the defense is not fast enough to keep up with an Ohio State or an Alabama offense. But I think it's the expectation of Michigan, and their fans are so out of whack. I mean, who else is Michigan going to get that's better than Jim Harbaugh if they let Harbaugh go?
That's what I was just about to say. Like, I know that Michigan fans have to be tired of him. But if you fire Jim Harbaugh, like, who on earth can you reasonably expect to come and take that job that's going to be like, that is the guy if you're Michigan. I just don't think, like, I don't know what you can do about it. I mean, that is the guy. You gave up everything for Jim Harbaugh. I mean, if he's not going to win at Michigan, you know, I mean, who is? Who are you going to go get? It's like, so he went 9-3 his last year at Stanford.
Harbaugh?
And then, yeah. Okay, so when he left before Andrew Luck's senior year.
I believe, was that the year when they played Oklahoma State, or was Shaw there at that time?
I think Shaw was there that year. But I'm not 100% sure of that. So, but it just, you know, you're right. All he had to do that one year was stop J.T. Barrett on 4th down. And that was, what, his first or second year there?
Yeah.
And now, you know, they got just embarrassed by Ohio State last year. Just absolutely embarrassed by Ohio State this year. It's not going to be any better. It's not going to be any better this year than last year. Like Ryan Day, Ryan Day inherited a ton of talent. But Ryan Day has Ohio State playing with that edge that Ohio State hasn't had since Ezekiel Elliott won the national title. Ohio State looks like right now they can go beat Clemson and Alabama. They haven't looked like that in a long time. Those last couple of years of Urban Meyer, they just went through the motions and beat everybody in the conference because they were better than them. To me, Ohio State this year looks like they did when they had Ezekiel Elliott, and it didn't matter who was playing quarterback. It could be Cardale Jones. It could be J.T. Barrett. It didn't matter. They just had that edge where they were going to beat you. That's how Ohio State looks this year to me. And then you have Michigan, and Shea Patterson looks awful.
Yeah.
Shea Patterson looks like a very bad quarterback. It's hard to believe Dylan McCaffrey's not better.
Yeah, did you see? You saw McCaffrey get lit up, but I don't even think McCaffrey's that talented. It's the quarterbacks he recruits are not talented. I mean, Wilton Spate. Remember, he begged Jake Rudock to come in there and play for him. So he's not getting these transfer quarterbacks that are very good for the modern game, like a Jalen Hurts. But about Ohio State, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Urban Meyer was like throwing up on the sidelines against Maryland. It was a miracle he didn't lose to like Maryland. Even TCU, those games were shootouts last year. So Ryan Day has refocused them. And Ohio State and Clemson are the only two teams, maybe Penn State, that are worth talking about, you know, outside the SEC footprint. I completely agree.
Yeah. And it's the Big 12 is fun, though. I think the Big 12, like, if you appreciate the Big 12 for what it is, and that is just a lot of really fun offenses, guys just doing fun stuff. They're not, and you know they're creative. I think the Big 12 is really fun. But I mean, I think Oklahoma will beat Texas pretty handily.
It's because, like, even though you're a big SEC guy, like, let's look at the Big 12 games compared to the SEC. We got Baylor, Kansas State last week. We had Iowa State, TCU. Now, TCU didn't show up and play, But then you had Texas, West Virginia. You know, the Big 12, you had Oklahoma State, Texas Tech. The middle of the Big 12 is just pretty compelling football. Like, I enjoy watching that football over, like, a Mississippi and a Vanderbilt, over an Alabama versus somebody. You know, like, you look at the bottom of the SEC, like, Kentucky's just not good. South Carolina's just ass. So that's why I like the Big 12 at times.
Yeah,
I do.
It's more, there's more parity. Anybody can win on a Saturday, as long as you're not playing Oklahoma and probably outside of Kansas, even though Kansas has won a couple games this year. It's just much more fun.
You saw Kansas hold the ball. That's why they stayed close. You saw that, right? Kansas?
They did what now?
No, Kansas, when they played Oklahoma. Did you see that game?
No, I did not.
Okay, you didn't miss much.
I thought like Kansas like scored first, and then after that, like Oklahoma won pretty easily. But did Kansas just hold on to the ball and not try to score?
They just tried to run down the clock in the first half, but then of course Oklahoma was able to jump on them in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you got to shorten the game if you're Kansas and you're playing against a stacked deck. I'm surprised. You know, how long until Lincoln Riley is the NFL head coach? It has to be soon.
Yeah, Lincoln Riley is a complete stud. He could do anything with these quarterbacks. Like, I don't think that Mike Leach would be a good NFL head coach, because even Cliff Kingsbury's having trouble, like that air raid offense of I'm not sure that they can run the football. To me, my favorite young coaches, I like Kellen Moore of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, I think he'll make a good head coach. Chris Richard also. So those are guys, but certainly Lincoln Riley, Matt Rule. I thought Matt Campbell would jump. Those are just some of the guys. Yeah,
Matt Rule looks like the real deal.
Yeah, Mike Gundy. So we're talking here with Seth Hughes and Seth. I wanted to maybe ask you one other quick question. I love talking college football with you, man. I really appreciate you coming on this show. You're welcome on anytime.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming.
Yeah, so
let me come on.
So, Seth, like a lot of programs, like you looked at Nebraska losing to Ohio State, and even at Tennessee, it seems like there's a big difference between like the Clemsons, the Alabamas of the world, and it seems like you're just trying to hit that sweet spot of like 8-4, 9-3, and then make that leap with the right head coach. Is that kind of what like Tennessee and Nebraska are trying to do? Is that what you're trying to find right now? It just seems like there's a huge difference between the top 4 teams and everybody else in college football.
Yeah, I think in some ways that Alabama has almost ruined the SEC. It's a little bit different this year because I think Georgia is elite. I think Georgia's probably better than Alabama. But there for a while, you know, it was Alabama, and then, like, LSU might win 9 or 10 games. Florida might win 9 or 10 games, but, like, they really weren't that good because Alabama had just ruined everyone.
Right.
And Alabama was just so far ahead. I don't know if, like, I think Tennessee fans in some cases would be happy with 8-4. In some cases, they're not going to be. Like if Tennessee had gone 8-4, say this year, which was definitely doable and possible, then Tennessee fans would have been thrilled. But you know, Butch Jones went 8-4 2 straight years, and then he got fired. So, but Butch Jones had teams that were littered with NFL players. It does seem like Tennessee just has to wait until Saban leaves Alabama in a sense, because Tennessee is matched up with Alabama every single year. And so Tennessee has to play Alabama, Georgia, and Florida every single year.
Yeah.
Those are 3 top 10 teams. Those 2 top 5 programs, 2 top 3 programs. And like next year, Tennessee's playing Oklahoma. So Tennessee next year is playing 3 of the top 5 programs in America.
Right.
And they're playing Oklahoma on the road. Like, one thing that would help Tennessee immensely is if the SEC would scratch the annual SEC West matchup and just go to 2 rotating games. So Tennessee could, this year they might have had to play Arkansas and Mississippi State instead of Alabama and Mississippi State, or they might have played Texas A&M and Mississippi State. And Texas A&M would beat Tennessee, but if Tennessee were to play Texas A&M at home, well, Tennessee has a chance.
Right.
Tennessee doesn't have a chance playing against Alabama.
No.
So that would help Tennessee immensely, is not having to play Alabama every year. I mean, Tennessee really gets the short end of the stick and the scheduling. Like Florida, they never have to play at Georgia. Georgia never has to play at Florida. Tennessee every other year has to play at Florida and at Alabama every other year without ceasing. That's a huge disadvantage because You're not going to go into Bryant-Denny and win, and it's really hard to go into the Swamp and win. And Georgia never has to go to the Swamp, and Georgia hasn't had to go to Alabama in years. So they never have to go to Florida and to Alabama in the same year like Tennessee does. There's a lot of things that Tennessee needs to do. One thing that would help immensely is just getting that annual matchup with Alabama off the schedule.
Yeah, getting it removed. It's just Tennessee too. Like Brian Maurer looked all right, but even Josh Dobbs, you were not. There really needs to be an elite level quarterback that comes in as a freshman that could stay 3 or 4 years, and a guru on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad about ever saying anything bad about Josh Dobbs because he's a million times better than Jarrett Guarantano ever was. But he just was never a good passer. I mean, he was never a good passer. He was an amazing runner, but then he just would make these crazy passes that just they wore on you. Tennessee does need a really, really, really good quarterback to come in as a freshman and just to say, I'm going to be the guy for the next 3 or 4 years, like Jake Fromm has been at Georgia. That changes everything.
That would change everything. And then he can recruit, and then he could start recruiting other players that quarterback. You also I think the culture of Tennessee football, the team is just not disciplined. I mean, you could say Bryce Thompson played really well, but even he was out making boneheaded plays, and there's just no discipline. And that's where I'd like to see the players and the recruiting be more disciplined, and that will hopefully happen. We'll have to see with this regime, but I don't mind even starting off with a young coach like a Will Healy, or like you said one time in the podcast, like Neil Brown, since you live near Troy. He's just a very honest, upfront guy. And if you just got a young guy and just give him time to build, and as long as he loves the fan base and everything, that would be really positive for Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee they somehow always find a way to hire the wrong guy. I mean, it's just they always find a way to hire the wrong guy. And I mean,
well, it's retread higher. There's no personality. They're not going through their personality. They're not really, Butch Jones, they couldn't decipher how corny he would be.
Yeah. And Kiffin had things looking good, but then he both suffered one year. I mean, Derek Dooley was awful. Jeremy Pruitt has been terrible thus far. I mean, Tennessee just finds a way to continually hire the wrong guy. And that's another thing that's really frustrating.
Right. We're talking here with Seth Hughes. Seth, I want to thank you so much for coming on the pod, man. I had a blast. I'm sure it was nice to see Baker Mayfield struggle last night on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I was watching the Nationals and Dodgers. It just sounds like the Browns don't have much of an offensive line.
Yeah, but Baker is regressing a little bit, and all that smack he was talking is coming back.
Yeah, he looks like a fool.
Looks like a fool.
He's made himself to look very bad by doing all that smack talk. But I appreciate it a lot. I'm glad I got to come on, and I will come on again soon. I had a great time. Always glad to talk college football with somebody.
Yes, sir. All right, Seth. Thanks so much, buddy. Take care.
Yes, sir. You take it easy, Spencer.